Hello, and welcome back to the 2020 ATSC Next Gen Broadcast Conference. My name is Madeline Noland. I'm president of ATSC, and I'm very pleased to bring you this year's Next Gen Broadcast Conference as a component of the NAB New York virtual event. I'd like to thank our ATSC sponsors who make so much of what we do possible. I'm very pleased to welcome and introduce two tremendous leaders from India's television and wireless industries. Mr. Shashi Vempati, CEO of Prasar Bharati, the national public broadcaster of India, delivering television, radio, and OTT services. Welcome, Mr. Vempati. And Ms. Pamela Kumar, Director General of TSDSI, a standards development organization and one of the 7 partners of the Third Generation Partnership Project, also known as 3GPP. So I'd like to start by congratulating Shashi, and I would say we have agreed first name basis is okay for this conference. So thank you both for that. I'd like to start by congratulating Shashi. Prasar Bharati has handled the COVID-19 situation extremely well under your leadership. And we know that you have taken special steps to provide indispensable services to the Indian people during this crisis. So we congratulate you on that and these crazy times and all the work that's gone into that. And I'd also like to congratulate Pamela on her leadership of TSDSI. Under Pamela's leadership, TSDSI has taken on a new role of importance within the 3GPP, including introducing original standard contributions within 3GPP that are specifically geared toward rural and underserved populations. And I thought that that was a really special and important contribution to the 3GPP standard because this kind of thing is going to be valuable all the world over. So congratulations to you both. And I'd also like to take a moment to talk a little bit about ATSC and our two fine guests. ATSC has recently formed an India implementation team, and the team is designed to help understand how the ATSC 3.0 standard might apply to the Indian region. And we are very grateful for the help of Shashi and Prasar Bharati, as well as TSDSI. With Prasar Bharati, we are working on a technical demonstration, which we hope will highlight the areas of ATSC 3.0, in particular, how it can serve a public broadcaster on the world stage. And we are also working with TSDSI to transpose ATSC 3.0 to an Indian standard. And when we're able to do that, then TSDSI can work on ATSC 3.0 and expand it and add to it and enhance it with more original content as specifically suits the Indian marketplace. So I'd like to talk to both of you for a moment because I understand that recently, or maybe not so recently anymore, Prasar Bharati has joined TSDSI as a member. And I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about why you decided to do this and where you see the convergence between the broadcast world and the wireless world coming together.
Thank you, Madeline. Very excited to be part of this panel. I hope to have actually visited the United States and participated in your physical event, which unfortunately couldn't happen because of COVID, as you rightly pointed out. It's been a challenging few months for all of us, and thanks for the appreciation. We've been able to do quite a few things during this period, especially ensuring that children who are at home get tele-education, leveraging the public broadcasting infrastructure. So it's been a massive effort across India, given the size of our country, the diversity of languages, and so on. So one of the issues that we are seeing with, in fact, if we just take the case of tele-education, that today it is all one way with just classes being delivered over television or radio. And if there's any interactivity, it requires internet access. Not every home, not every child has access to high-speed internet and computers to be able to have a very interactive sort of education and so on. So one of the areas that we foresee in the future is being able to deliver broadcast content to smartphones. India, as you know, is a young nation, a nation where mobile data is fast growing, one of the largest consumers of mobile data. The smartphone penetration has also increased substantially in the last few years. There's more consumption of video happening through mobile phones in rural India than in urban India, which is a recent statistic. Right? So it's a very different kind of nation that we are looking at, and a very different kind of audience that we need to serve, unlike what was probably a decade ago, where it was primarily a broadcast audience. So one of the challenges for the public broadcaster is how do we reach out to the youth of India, the population that's increasingly consuming media on smartphones, by ensuring that our broadcast signals are received on these devices, mobile devices. And I think that is where TSDSI comes in, and this interaction with ATSC as well, where we would like to see an evolution of standards so that broadcast content can be delivered directly to mobile phones, smartphones, and that capability should be aligned to the emerging standards, be it ATSC 3.0 or 5G standards that are emerging, so that every phone in the future comes with this embedded capability. A common feature in India, while I've spent some time in the United States, and I know that the majority of the consumption of FM radio is in the cars, while in India it's very different. In India, the majority of consumption of FM radio is on mobile phones, because every mobile phone comes with an embedded capability to receive the FM radio signals. So what if tomorrow every phone, every smartphone also has the ability to receive broadcast video and every other broadcast signal? That would be a game-changing moment for public broadcasting, and it is to realize that vision, that future, that we would like to see a very close involvement of the public broadcaster in the emerging standards, and also collaboration across standards bodies in India, United States, and so on. If you look at between the US and India, you not only have the two largest democracies, you also have the two largest markets for mobile data and smartphones in the free world, right? So this convergence is not just about technology standards. It is also perhaps the convergence of two of the largest economies to create this opportunity for direct to mobile broadcasting. So that is the future. That is, the motivation, the driver for this, becoming a member of TSDSI and collaborating on various fronts to see this happen.
Thank you very much, Shashi. And Pamela, we understand that in TSDSI, you're already undertaking some effort to work on this kind of convergence that Shashi talked about. Can you talk about some of the work that's already happening in TSDSI?
So let me step back a little. I think Shashi gave a very good, background on why we need to think about adoption of these new technologies differently when you try to deploy them in India. So whereas fundamentally, broadband convergence makes a lot of sense, but in an Indian context, it is the usage patterns and the adoption that happens in India is different. So we need to keep that in mind as we evolve these standards. And the case to point I want to bring is in the case of 5G, when we were sitting in ITU and the rural broadband use case, the enhanced mobile broadband usage scenario for rural broadband was being discussed, there were two proposals on the table. There was one proposal from China where they said that they have bullet trains at 500 kilometers per hour running through their villages, and they want uninterrupted 100 megabit per second, broadband in their villages. That's what they want to guarantee. And Europe and America were talking about 125 kilometer per hour vehicles going on highways in their villages, and that was their use case. And we were sitting there and saying that we're not going to have these highways or bullet trains in our village. We have 70% of our population living in the villages, consuming, their video and broadband, and that's their need. And that's they becoming, they're saying roti, kapda, makan, and broadband. Roti, kapda means food, clothing, housing, and broadband. These are the four pillars of sustainable development in India. So broadband has become one of the fundamental pillars of development in India, right? And we want to guarantee 100 megabit per second uninterrupted broadband to every villager, every man in the street, whether he's standing or he's walking or he's at 30 kilometers per hour in a vehicle, right? So there was a technology developed and researched in India which enables the base stations. So our villages are spread in a way where we have something called a gram panchayat, surrounded by a few hamlet of villages, and these are spread out at a difference of 6 to 12 kilometers from each other. So we want base stations spread out at 6 to 12 kilometers, and that's where some of the broadcast frequencies can be very valuable in India to enable this, if this convergence enables that. So to reach everybody, we need to put base stations at these intersite distances compared to the 1 mile, last mile concept that has proliferated traditionally in the cellular world. We have worked, for the last 3 to 4 years, leveraging support from other developing countries, both in ITU and now in 3GPP, to enable this concept of low mobility, large cell as a new usage scenario and new technology to support it. We feel a similar thing needs to happen in the case of a broadcast broadband convergence that Shashi has talked about. That's a different use case. The same thing, when you bring it to India, the way it's going to get consumed and the priorities on what is needed, as he said, in India, it's rural first, right? It has to be rural first because that's the vote bank in India, right? So every new technology has to be rural first. So if we are going to proliferate broadcast broadband convergence for consumption by our rural customers, their usage patterns will be different, and that needs to be understood, embraced, studied, and incorporated into any standard that will get acceptance and get suitably deployed in this country. So with that context, we have some of our startups which have actually developed technology, to enable this broadband broadcast convergence, and as well as Prasar Bharati, we have gone and met several broadcasters who have begun to join TSTSI. So we are creating this focus group, which will enable to bring this, and we are also entering into this agreement with ATSC to put all the infrastructure or the logistics in place to enable to bring this convergence standards into the country. As you're saying, there's a pilot already going on, so I think this is the right time to do it.
Fantastic. And so I wonder if, Shashi, you can talk about some of the key use cases from the point of view of Prasar Bharati for what the broadcast needs to do in India. So you talked about distance education. I think that's a key use case. Radio is a key use case. Do you have thoughts, for example, about other use cases such as perhaps emergency messaging or some key aspects of television viewing that you're wanting to bring to the rural populations as well as to the big cities?
Absolutely. One of the biggest challenges that we face as the public broadcaster in India is the linguistic diversity. India has about more than 20 official languages. And once we get into radio, we have close to more than 100 dialects that we service. So you're talking of content that is being created every day in more than 100 languages and dialects. So one of the challenges for us is how do I conserve my resources? So when I'm creating content, I create it once, but then I amplify it in multiple languages and have it delivered in different languages. So to be able to use broadcast technologies more efficiently, the broadcast infrastructure, and give the end consumer the freedom, the flexibility to choose the language of choice, to be able to receive the content in that specific language, would be one use case that where we would like to see how we can leverage the emerging technologies. Another use case, which is again very uniquely Indian, is around audience measurement, where because of the sheer demographic complexity, the traditional panel-based methods have serious limitations. So we would like to see if, using the emerging broadband broadcast convergent capabilities, can we do census-wide audience measurement? So that would be another interesting area of opportunity for us. Radio, as you pointed out. So we have an app called News on Air, where we have our entire radio network of about 200 plus radio stations available on this app, which you can stream over the internet. What we would like to do is have this capability available on mobile phones, leveraging the broadcast spectrum, so that the content can get delivered to mobile phones over the broadcast infrastructure. And to be able to then measure it, because today radio measurement in India is practically non-existent because it is an old diary-based method, and it is error-prone. It is not real-time. There's barely any technology underlying it. If we could bring in technology-based radio measurement and do it across the entire base of mobile phones, which is where most of the radio listening is also happening, it would be a fantastic game changer. So these are some very uniquely Indian scenarios and use cases that I would like to see the emerging technology on smartphones be able to enable for the broadcasting industry.
Thank you, Shashi. I've just started my India history book and discovered all the languages and 5,000 years of incredible diversity and depth, and I can understand the multiple languages that are necessary. So Pamela, thinking about the scenarios that Shashi just described, you mentioned that there could be a broadcast traffic offload scenario, which would suggest some kind of traffic steering almost in the core network. But and you think about what Shashi is talking about, one could imagine that you could have radio or television services sent over the broadcast to the phone with multiple languages, all provided in the broadcast service. And then at the user end, they can select their language as to which one they want to listen to. But thinking about the uplink, obviously the broadcast system worldwide is a downlink only system. And there would need to be some kind of convergence in the mobile device itself, where sort of the user data, in other words, the broadcast in all the languages, et cetera, are provided to the phone via the broadcast spectrum as the downlink. But then there would need to be some convergence in the device itself in order to utilize perhaps a smaller bandwidth for uplink traffic. So perhaps the larger piece of traffic would be the download, which would be perhaps radio with multiple languages or video as well. And then the uplink might be a small package saying that this is the measurement for this anonymous user, so that programming changes can be made according to what people are doing. So do you see convergence both in the core network as well as in the user device for this kind of broadcast traffic offload scenario?
Well, see, technology can be an enabler. You can use technology in different ways, but I think one has to understand the ground reality, right? We are actually in the midst of talking to the satellite communication. Our body ISRO also, they have also become a member, and the discussion on how the entire spectrum on both the ends. So there is broadcast on one end, and there is the satellite frequencies on the other end. And how do you do dynamic spectrum sharing and enable different kind of spectrum utilization patterns in the most optimal way? So theoretically, yes, we can say that different parts of the spectrum we should use it more effectively. This is the best way to use it. But I think we are a long way off for that kind of a ubiquitous, optimized way of utilizing spectrum. Today, I think the legacies are very strong, right? The legacy of the way that the broadcast spectrum is being used, and I think there'll be a phased manner in which we have to take some baby steps initially and do some early pilots and early deployments. I don't think at TSDSI we take any position on this. We are just a platform, an SDO, where our users will come and And depending on what makes sense and how the conversations go, I think we will see this emerging. But it's very important that the model that Prasar Bharati is taking right now of trying to do a early pilot, right, a proof of concept, and then trying to bring it into the standards as an enhancement, leveraging an already existing global standard like ATSC 3.0. I think this is a very good model with which we are approaching it. And all we can say is that we have the platform and the environment available now to be able to do these things in the early phases, right? So as ATSC 3.0 is probably getting adopted elsewhere, we are also looking at it from an India perspective, and hopefully we will embrace it in its early phases.
Just to add to what Pamela just said, one of the legacies in India is also that how the broadcast and the telecom sectors are regulated and administered. While we have a common regulator, TRAI, the administrative management of both these sectors is with different ministries historically. And then space is a third ministry, a third department altogether. And because of this legacy, where these three different segments have been managed and administered differently by different elements within the government, there are silos, and which is why, as she rightly cautioned, that it's a long journey and it will take some time. We'll have to go through several baby steps before this convergence truly happens in the absolute sense. Just because of these silos that have evolved over the decades, given how these three sectors were administered.
Yes, that makes a lot of sense. And what's interesting also, I think, is that India is experiencing pressures that Shashi described in terms of the number of people watching and using the cellular infrastructure for watching video. In fact, also linear video, not just video on demand. But what's interesting is it makes India almost into the leadership position in these kinds of convergence scenarios, because I could envision these kinds of scenarios being needed elsewhere in the world, but where India is in a position, as you mentioned, one of the largest markets of mobile data consumption, one of the largest areas of rural data consumption, and sort of being a pain point in India before any place else, which, for better or for worse, and I think for better, puts India in almost a required position of leadership, which I think other countries will definitely be able to, build off of work that might take place in Prasar Bharati and in conjunction with TSDSI and the standards development. I was wondering, looking perhaps at broadcast standards, whether they be a 3GPP broadcast or an ATSC 3 broadcast or a satellite, do you see changes that need to happen in the standards in order to enable the various use cases that we're discussing? Do you anticipate certain things that the standards are going to have to adopt or that TSDSI would be potentially contributing to various worldwide standards in order to make these things happen?
So I think, so our members have already come together and published a report. And in that report, they have tabulated multiple scenarios and use cases which they feel are India specific and would require changes. So that work is ongoing, and the study of these standards has been initiated. Now, to get into the specifics, I think I don't really have the specifics here. I'm not the expert who can relay that to you. But all I can say is that, yes, there is serious work. We do have a report out there which did some preliminary broad brush understanding of this, where they identified the specific gaps where they want to focus. And as things progress, and again, I would like to emphasize that this concept of trying to do a pilot initially is very key to really being able to make the right choices on where to change and how to enhance the standards. That's a very key aspect of it.
That's fantastic, and I've already learned something because, as you may know, ATSC delivered a suggested list of use cases for a pilot, And I've already learned from Shashi that maybe we can add a couple, like multiple languages. Some of them we had already available. Can you talk a little bit about emergency messaging? In the world that's changing today, and with the climate as it is, and I'm wondering, how do your two organizations envision emergency messaging sort of over the next 5 to 10 years? How would you like to see those capabilities developing?
Yeah, so emergency alerts and disaster management is going to be an important area of focus. India traditionally has not had a very evolved system of emergency alerting to the public. Whatever little alerting has happened has generally happened through news bulletins and news releases and so on. Now, recently, the National Disaster Management Authority of India has taken the initiative to put in place a protocol by which these emergency alerts will be disseminated. So that is an active area of focus right now. Both public TV and public radio are collaborating with the Disaster Management Authority to put in place this architecture. So I foresee that those use cases would be again of interest to the capabilities that we build on direct to mobile broadcasting, because whenever a disaster strikes, one of the things that we've often seen in India is that the cellular network goes down. There's a spike in people trying to reach everyone. The calls don't go through, the messages don't go through. So broadcast alerting would be very critical. Floods or earthquake or any of these natural disasters. So getting these alerts delivered to people would be very important. Another thing that again is going to be a reality that we will have to adapt to in India is that while in the case of traditional broadcasting, be it TV or radio, the public messaging is mandated by law. So by law, every satellite operator, every cable operator has to carry the public channels. So that's how you ensured that the public TV got a space on every platform, and any public messages got delivered. Now with increasingly media consumption moving to the smartphones, there is no mandate by law. So if you are a young man and let's say or a young woman in the early 20s, don't own a regular television, you're not on any of the traditional broadcasting DTH or cable platforms, you only consume content through your smartphone, there is no way for public TV or public radio to reach you. And that is going to be a problem in case of emergency messaging and disaster alerts and so on. So it would be very important that whatever protocol we put in place for disaster management is necessarily having a way to be delivered to every smartphone. So that is a potential mandate that we can foresee coming sometime in the future. And this kind of an enabling technology will be very important to ensure that. So I definitely see this as a very important use case going forward.
And Pamela, are there any efforts taking place either within TSDSI or amongst your members on this area?
So we do have parallel work happening on this, on critical communications. Okay, so in line with what is happening in so-called PPDR in 3GPP as well as in ITU, we do have an effort going on within TSDSI, and we do have our first paper which has done surveys of the various police. In fact, in our case, it is the police wireless department, wireless communication department from the police, which has come forward on to understand this space and try to see how to develop standards in this area. And given what Shashi just mentioned about NDMA, our National Disaster Management Authority, and that convergence, I think there could be some convergence between them. But we need to ensure that the right people are talking to the right people to take this forward. But we have connected mainly with the police departments at this point, but I think we need to take it forward to the next level.
Well, that's very interesting, and ATSC has envisioned a type of delivery where the emergency message is intended for the first responders at first, and not the general public yet, for example. So getting messages to the police or to the fire department when necessary, as well as having a method for delivering messages to the general public. But I'm so sorry that we're almost out of time. And so I want to thank our panelists very much. And I wonder if maybe you think we're going to be getting together face to face, maybe only 1 year from now or less. We hope so. But I invite you both to say any last words if you wish.
Sure. Thanks again for having us today, and really look forward to meeting in person sooner than later. As I said earlier in my conversation, that the India and United States have a unique opportunity here as two very large markets with very similar sort of challenges. And so if this convergence between standards, between technology, and two countries comes together, I think there's an opportunity here for us to create a market for direct-to-mobile broadcasting. So we absolutely look forward to this collaboration and this interaction.
Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity. And I remember the first workshop that we had with ATSC, where we invited Shashi Vempati to, as one of our keynote speakers there. I think there was a lot of excitement that came in that session, and seeing it progress, I appreciate the perseverance that has been there, because this requires a lot of sustained perseverance and patience to work through all the challenges. And I'm glad that we are coming to this point now that we are taking the next leap, and as he said, look forward to face-to-face, and hopefully whether it's in the US or in India, that will definitely enable us to take this forward. But maybe we can do our pilots remotely as well, right? Virtually as well, we can test the pilots to take this to the next level. So thanks a lot, Madeline. I think it's great to be associated with you and the team in this journey of broadband convergence.
Well, thank you both very much. And we're all looking forward to learning a great deal from both of you and from India in general, and looking forward to your original contributions to broadcast broadband convergence. And we're very happy to be working closely with you both. And we can't wait to be face-to-face again. So for now, we'll do everything in the cloud. We will do a technical demonstration, COVID or no COVID, and we'll go from there. So thank you very much. And we will talk again soon.
Thank you. Thank you.